Shalom Uvracha. We're talking about what things will look like in the times of Mashiach. And of course, we don't know everything that it will look like, but we've been given glimpses into what is currently happening in the world and what will continue to unfold. And one thing that we mentioned yesterday is that the free will in the times of Mashiach will be such that in the beginning we will still have a Yetzer Hara, we'll still have struggles like we currently have. And as Mashiach comes, he will continue to teach humanity how, in which ways, appropriate to every single person, the most balanced, healthy, productive way to be close to the Creator of the world. And through his wondrous advice, we'll be able to slowly but surely become so clear that all that we really want is a relationship with Hashem, the Creator of heaven and earth, that at the end of the Mashiach period will be a full slaughtering of the evil inclination. At that point, evil will once and for all be gone from the world. And that's what we talk about on Rosh Hashanah, that the evil will go up and dissipate, ka'ashan tikla, like smoke just goes up, even though smoke looks so real, right? You know the expression of smoke screen? It looks so hardcore, but then it just dissipates. And it goes. And you realize there wasn't much there in the first place. And that will be categorized by the end of the Messianic era, where there will be no more free will. Like we mentioned from King Solomon yesterday, Yom She'ein Bam Chayfetz, I have no more desire, which means all I want to do is be connected to Hashem. Why would I go for a piece of, give me a really gruel. Remember that stuff from the Matrix? You know that stuff, gruel? If I put a bowl of gruel, cold gruel, or Wagyu steak, Kobe beef. Kosher Kobe. Kosher, where they massage the cows, and give them beer. What would you have? Do you have any free will in that decision? If you tell me gruel, then we need to have a talk. It's so obvious. Why would you go for the gruel when you could have the Kobe? Why would you go for some tarnished piece of tin when you could have an emerald? So it's going to be so obvious when Mashiach comes that what is going to attract you. Should I watch another episode of Netflix for the 17th hour today? Or come to Shacharis? What's going to be no question at that time. The world will come to such a level of clarity and Mashiach will get us there. Mashiach will be an amazing Torah sage, like we mentioned so many classes ago, from the Rambam. And he'll be the one that will teach us the Torah. He's called the Pele Yoyetz, the master advisor. And he's going to teach us the same Torah that we received at Mount Sinai. And nothing in the Torah is going to change, not one iota of the Torah. And it's the same Torah that God taught to Adam and Eve in the garden. That's amazing. Adam had a great life. He was made by God, and his Rebbe was God. That's a pretty good life. And Hashem was, it's pretty good. Because it came into my head, I have to say it. Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, Zecher Tzadik V'Kodesh Livracha, the famous Rosh Hashiva of the Mir, the Rosh Hashiva's Rebbe. So he said famously an amazing vort. You can use this when you go to a Sheva Bracha, so when somebody gets married. Just remember this one. So it says that when Adam was in the garden, so he was learning Torah from God. He had everything he could ever need. God made him. He was completely connected in the Garden of Eden. And then it says that he should go get married. And before it says that he should get married, God says in the Torah, "Loi toiv heyoisa adam levado." It's not good for a man to be by himself. Eseloi ezer kenegdoi, I will make him a helpmate, and he shall get married. So Rav Chaim Shmulevitz said beautifully. He said, "Wait a second. Adam was in the Garden of Eden, learning Torah from God. Could life be any better?" Says Hashem, "It's not good for you to be by yourself. Get married." So Chaim Shmulevitz said, being in the Garden of Eden is good. It's amazing. But you know what's even better than being in the Garden of Eden? Getting married. So you see that getting married is even better than being in Gan Eden. Gewaldig. Now, by the way, I just have to give you like a caveat. Like we cut this part out, like editor's cut, stop video here. Marriage is, this is the famous line, not as good as the non-married guys think it is, and not as bad as the married guys tell you it is. It's kind of a joke, it's a bit of a sad one, but there's some truth to it. But according to Rav Chaim Shmulevitz, it's not true, because really what marriage should be, the holy sanctity of marriage, is that it's better than being in the Garden of Eden. And if a person really works on their marriage, and works on the communication and the relationship and the feelings that go along with being somebody who's taking care of somebody else and committed to somebody else, you have something greater than living in the Garden of Eden. And therefore, we need to re-establish and strengthen the institution of marriage again in the world, especially nowadays, where divorces are more than 50%. In the regular world out there, that is very sad. And we have to help the world, because the sanctity of marriage is everything. It's all of the depth of relationship happens in that place. And the Torah has the way to help us to fuse and to fuse together in a sacred way. So Adam had the Torah, and Adam passed the Torah down generation through generation, and we have a tradition that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob also studied Torah. They had the Torah. They had it intuitively. They kept the entire Torah. It was officially given to the entire nation at Har Sinai. And that is the same Torah that we're learning until this very day. The Rambam explains in the laws, the teacher of humanity, the Rambam, Maimonides, teaches in the halachas of the kings in chapter Yud Aleph, halacha Gimel 11:3, that the Torah, all of its laws, all of its directives are eternal, forever and ever. One cannot add to it, nor can one subtract from it. The Torah is eternal. Nothing can change. The Torah has everything that we need, and we cannot change even one iota. And that same Torah was passed down from generation to generation. Even the word Torah means to teach. Torah means teach. So precious, you should know, the Torah is, and the importance of preserving it in its pristineness was that it was a famous thing that in the Middle Ages, that oftentimes rabbis were put into jail. Oftentimes it was, of course, cooped up so that they could ransom them off and pay for them to get out. And many of the great, great works that we have from them were written while they were in jail. And it was so important that they would write down the transmission and preserve it, that sometimes they would even write down the Torah in their blood. Because if they did not have the ink, or they did not have the means to write down the Torah and keep it alive, then they felt that that was basically life itself depended on it, and they would write it literally in their blood. That's kind of morbid, but it's also, it just shows you this is life itself. Kihem chayenu. And the Torah was preserved in a pristine state through all the generations. And the same Torah that we have today is the same one that will be here when Mashiach comes. Now the Torah, the Zohar explains, has 613 mitzvahs. You know what the Zohar says about these 613 mitzvahs? The Zohar calls them 613 pieces of advice. The Torah you can eat them. The 613 pieces of good advice, which means if you want to have a relationship with the master of the world, I've got some good advice for you. Maybe you should check these out. Just check these out. No, I think I'm going to get my advice from Hollywood. Yeah, they got great advice. You know, how to just totally ruin your life and become Hashem Yirachem. I don't know many good Hollywood stories of beautiful family situations, nice, kids that are really happy and hang out with their families. You're probably going to bring me, one or two examples, but let's look at the majority of cases that have no, drug or alcohol abuse problems. So it's obvious I should probably be getting my life advice from Hollywood, right? But sadly, that's what happens. And the Torah, written by the master of the world, says, well, I can also give you advice how to be successful in this world. Maybe it's a good idea to hearken your ear to that. Oh, no, I think I'll just go with like the Hollywood option. Thank you very much. I would say that's not such an intelligent decision. And a person must think about that in a really real way. Where am I getting my advice from? You should know halacha, which we mentioned yesterday. Halacha means the laws. It also means the way that we walk. Let me ask you a question. Are there rules to keeping your body healthy? If a person drinks lead, will they be healthy?
I doubt it.
Pretty doubtful. If they, I don't know, give me another example. Sniff paint, is that a good idea for their health? Why not? If they touch, an element that's hot, will that be good for their health? Why? Because the rules of nature dictate that your body cannot handle that much heat, and that will actually burn your skin. And fumes of paint are toxic and are not very good. There are rules of nature to keep your body healthy. There are also rules of nature to keep your soul healthy. And your soul is much more delicate than your body. Even your body is very delicate and needs to be taken care of. Your soul is even more delicate. How do you take care of your soul? The answer is the 613 pieces of advice from the Torah. And the soul is very sensitive. If you take these advice, your soul will not only be good in this world, your soul will be good in the world to come, which we're going to be getting to shortly in the next few classes. The soul needs to have the right advice to keep it healthy. So either we could take, the law into my own hands. I'm going to get advice for my soul from, like Hollywood. That's going to be great. Bad move, bro. But what about getting advice on your soul from the master of the world? Well, he has it exactly detailed what needs to be done. And when I say he, I want people to know, God is also referred to in the her as well. And that's a much longer discussion, but we use he sometimes to refer to Hashem in one aspect, and we use God in the feminine when we refer to Hashem the way that he is, or her, here, in a very, very, let's call the Shechina, in a very, very tangible way in this world. So both we refer to God as in male and female. And that's a longer discussion, and we'll, Bezrat Hashem, get into that. So we have this advice, the 613 piece of advice to perfect our souls. And Eitzah, which means advice, comes from the same word as what? An eitz. Isn't that interesting? What's an eitz?
Tree.
The tree. Who knows one? I know one. Who knows a tree that's very familiar, going back to the beginning of creation?
Apple tree.
Oh, the Eitz Adas. Wasn't that's an interesting tree, right? How many trees were in the garden? Well, there was a lot of trees. What were the two trees that are specifically mentioned? Eitz Adas, Teverana, Eitz Chaim. The tree of life and the tree of, let's call it knowledge of good and evil. It's much deeper than that. Now, I'll tell you a secret. It's not for today. It was actually one tree. It was the same tree. The higher part of the tree was the tree of life. The lower part of the tree, this is nothing in physical space, was the Eitz Adas. If Adam would have eaten from the higher part, the higher conscious part, he would have known how to eat from the lower part. But he ate from the lower part before he ate from the higher part. It was all one tree though. That Eitz, because he ate from the lower tree first, he became completely submerged in physicality consciousness and driven after the sensuality of this world as a primary motivator. Essentially, his animal soul took over. Anyone who wants more detail on this, stay with us in the Tanya, as we'll develop this a lot. So the Eitz, this tree, the way to fix that Eitz is to take the Eitzah, the good advice of the Torah. If we listen to the good advice of the Torah, the Eitzah of the Torah will fix the Eitz, that tree that we ate in the garden. Now the question which begs at this point is, if we've had the Torah, the same Torah for all these years, then what will Mashiach introduce to us? If it's the same Torah, why haven't we all just become enlivened with the truth? Meaning we have the Torah. So, why aren't we getting it together? Okay, this is important. Anyone heard that the Torah exists on 4 levels? What's that called? Anybody know? Pardes. That we learn the Torah on 4 dimensions. What's Pardes stand for, Manny? Remez, Drush, and So. Simple. Remez is hinting. Drush is, I think they call it exegesis, whatever that means. It means literally learning one concept to another concept, and then So is secrets. But there's actually a 5th called the secrets of secrets. There's a 5th. By the way, just so you know, this is not for today. We'll talk about it maybe more in Pesach time. Anytime that you have 4, there's always a hidden 5th. Oh yeah. Every 4 has a hidden 5th. Always. How many cups are in the Passover Seder? 4.
5.
Whose is that? Elijah the prophets. There's always a hidden 5th. And everything about Passover is 4 and a hidden 5th. How many sons are there? 4. Who's the hidden 5th?
You.
The son that didn't even come to the Passover Seder.
So the Rosh is not the worst one.
That's right. At least he showed up.
So we can enact on him.
Yeah, he showed up. The one that's still in the streets with his girl. He needs the most help. There's a hidden 5th. How many letters in God's name? 4. Yud. 4. Then there's a crown on top of the Yud. That's the hidden 5th. There's 4, there's always a hidden 5th. Okay? There's 4 levels of Torah, but there's a hidden 5th. Okay? There's simple, hinting, drush, secrets, and then there's the secrets of secrets, which we call, I'm going to give you guys a technical word right now, called Attic.
Can you spell that?
Attic. The ancient old one. Attic. Or Atika Kadisha, or Atika Stima. The mysteries of the ancient holy one, the ancient hidden one. Attic also corresponds to Keter, which we already mentioned. The Mashiach's soul comes from this world called Keter, called the crown, like the crown on top of the Yud, where everything is unified in that place. By the way, how many levels are there to the soul?
4.
So it's always going to be the same thing. We have Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chayeh, Yechida. We don't usually talk about the top 2. It's always like Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, right? Naran. Chai Yechida is like, we don't talk about those ones. But you should know, Yechida is essentially the place where all of our souls are one. We talked about this yesterday in the Tanya, like the sun. So when it comes into different rooms, it looks like it's different souls. But when you trace it back to its source, it's all one sun. So the place that all of our souls are one is called Atik. It's called Atika Kadisha. Atika Stima is essentially called the place of unification. So Mashiach, the answer to the question of this new Torah, like it says in the verses in Yeshayahu and Jeremiah, that there's going to be a new Torah and something new will come forth. What is that referring to? That's referring to nothing will change in the Torah, but Mashiach will reveal the deepest understanding of the Torah. We'll be able to really see the secrets of the Torah, of what's really going on.
A lot of people who aren't ready for that yet.
So, it says in the time to come that Hashem will take the sun out of its sheath, and the righteous will be healed, and the wicked will be... Because when the sun is out of its sheath, we'll see the full radiance of what the Torah has to offer. And that will be the level of Atik, that'll be the level of complete unification, and we hope that we have the vessels to get there. Now you should know...
I mean, someone who's on their way, but isn't learning, like...
So that's what we said. The Mashiach will start to guide people in that way. That's the whole. He's not just going to leave people high and dry. But at a certain point, Hashem will have to stop in order to really give reward, because you can't have any reward if there's no free will. So at a certain point, all that you accomplished will be done, and that's called, we said, Shabbos. And then there'll be the time period after that, and we're going to start the time period tomorrow. Now the question is, do we have any revelation of this Torah of Atik, this Torah that's the unifying level of the Torah, the fifth level that Mashiach will reveal to us? The answer is a little bit. Some of the great tzaddikim in all the generations touch this place. It's not widespread, but the great tzaddikim in every generation touch this place. There's special individuals. Rabbi Nachman spoke about this a lot in his stories. A person who davens with Mesiras Nefesh. I'm quoting on Rabbi Nachman now. I suggest look this up afterwards in Likutei Moharan, the first book, Torah 15, the fourth paragraph, where he's talking about essentially to get to that place of Atik. So he says, if you daven so strongly that essentially your physical body starts to not really have much of a, it's not really there anymore. I'm not sure if you've ever seen people who are really davening, like really. Their bodies are not, really, and the Shulchan Aruch says this. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch, it says a person can get to a level of davening of hispashtus agashmis. Basically, where you just kind of leave your body and you're totally above body consciousness. Once you get to a place above body consciousness, you could glimpse Atik, you could glimpse this futuristic Torah. That's why there were certain people, certain great people, they could see into the future, they could see, because once you're above this world, you're not limited to time, you're not limited to space, you can glimpse something above this world. That's the Torah of Atik. Certain times of the year, it can open up also, like on Purim. Everybody knows Purim is the holiest day of the year, right? Because Yom Kippurim is just the day, we think Yom Kippur is the holy, no, Yom Kippurim, it's just a day like Purim. So on Purim is the real day. On Yom Kippur, you can get to the level on the Ela, which is, of course, how many tefillos do we have on Yom Kippur? 5. So on the 5th, the last tefillah of Yom Kippur, Ne'ilah, Atik, and beep, open up. When you scream, Hashem Elokim, you can glimpse something of the future. So that's what it means that a new Torah, that the prophets are talking about, and a new covenant that the prophets are talking about, is that Mashiach will reveal a deeper way to look at the Torah that we have, and it will awaken us to this unbelievable light of unification, of Hashem being one, and we're yearning for that. These are the days that are coming, my dear friends, and we're mamish excited for this. Tomorrow we're going to start, because everybody's always asking about it, a timeline, essentially of the 6,000 years of creation, and where things fit onto that. And from here we're going to be transitioning into talking about resurrection, talking about the world of the souls, life after death, like the light stuff, the simple stuff, the light stuff, and moving into the world to come a little bit. And you should know, just as a disclaimer, the exact details of things we don't know. And anybody who says that I can exactly measure when Mashiach's coming, the Gemara says, run away from that guy also. It's not going to be good for him. We can't measure, we can't predict with precision, but we can see the signs on the wall of things progressing. And many of the tzaddikim said we're already in these final days of the Ikvus of the Mashiach, these footsteps of this era. And therefore we can just show generally where we're at on the time frame, the time scale, and then that'll give us a real perspective of what's going on and kind of how to see everything and how to make it very practical that we can get our act together during these days. We should be zayv to this Amen ve'Amen. Have a wonderful day, Chevra. A wonderful afternoon.